Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes, so please stay tuned. Good evening, guys. Guys, let's wait for 3 more minutes and then we'll start. I guess we can start. A very good evening to one and all present here. My name is Aryan Bhosle, and this is the internship panel session. This session has been brought to you by WnCC, our Institute's Web and Coding Club, in association with CareerCell. I can't wait to interact with each and every one of our panelists and know about their journey. But before that, I have an announcement. Very soon, WnCC is going to be conducting another preparatory session for you called the Internship Preparation Session. And it's going to cover topics like object-oriented programming, computer networks, database management systems, and operating systems. So stay tuned for more updates. A cherry on the top is that these sessions are going to be conducted by Rajat Jain, a student who graduated this year, who's now working at Quad-I, but has agreed to conduct these sessions for us. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panelists. Joining us today, we have Sahasra Ranjan, intern at Rubrik. Devin, hello. Devin Bansal, intern at Microsoft.
Hey everyone.
Divyanshi Kamra, intern at Google.
Hello.
Naman Chanduka, intern at Optiver.
Hello guys.
And Shruti Singh, intern at Honeywell.
Hi.
If you could all go one by one and introduce yourself, tell us which branch you're from and where you're from, that would be great. Any one of you could start. Sahasra, maybe.
So hello everyone. I'm Sahasra and I'm in CSE department and I'm currently interned at Rubrik and I'm originally from Patna.
Thank you.
So hi everyone. I'm Devan, and as he said, I'm working at Microsoft currently, and I am having an offline intern over here at Hyderabad, and I'm originally from Punjab.
Great to know.
Hello, I am from electrical department, like dual degree basically, and I am doing an intern at Google. My project is with the fraud defense team, which comes under Megamind, which works for fraud defense on Google Maps basically, and Google My Business. And I am based in MP, and I am currently having an online intern.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm from the civil department and I'm currently interning at Optiver. I'm originally from Ahmedabad.
Hi, I'm from Mechanical Dual and I'm currently interning at Honeywell. It's an offline intern, so I'm in Bangalore and it's raining.
Nice. It was very nice to get to know all of you personally. Now, if you could tell us more about the company you're interning at and your role at that company.
So I'll start. As I said, that I'm interned at Rubrik, and Rubrik basically works on the cloud data backup and recovery system. So basically, it manages all the data system for other companies. So the consumer of Rubrik product is some other companies, and it's not for a consumer level users. So I'm currently working on garbage cleaning of database. So I have to basically clean some of the irrelevant data on the database that Rubrik have. So also I'm currently working offline at Rubrik in Bangalore. So summing it up, I love the experience here and all the culture and mentors that we have.
That's great.
Yeah, so I'll go next. And so Microsoft here in India has a lot of teams working on different things, ranging from ML to apps and everything. And one of those things is Office apps, that is the Excel, PowerPoint, Word, etc. And I am based in the Excel online team, where I am currently working on creating a React toolbar, which is basically the toolbar that is visible to you when you open an Excel workbook on mobile browser. And I'm this is a 2 month internship, and yeah, that's it.
I'll go next. So At Google again, we also have a lot of projects which are based upon your profile. So since my profile was majorly on the ML end, my project is also on similar lines. And as I mentioned earlier, I am working with the fraud defense team, which comes under a system called Megamind, which is basically the AI subunit of a network called Geo at Google. Geo basically has a lot of apps which are Geo Earth, Google My Business, Google Maps, and all of it. My major task is working with Google Maps and Google My Business. And as the name says, it's like a fraud defense team. So we are trying to build more and more filters so that we avoid any fraud from existing, like surfacing on Google Maps. That's roughly like my role. And it's an online intern, so that's pretty sad.
That's bad.
Yeah, so I'm currently offline at Amsterdam working at Optiver, and my role is basically it's a trader role, which is split into a trading part and a research part. So in the trading part, I basically have to do simulation trading. And in the research part, my project is to essentially backtest some particular strategies to see if historically they would have made money or not.
I'll go next. So it's like Honeywell is like a huge company. It has its hands in a lot of fields. It's aero, safety solutions, and recently it got into software. So I'm a part of the HCE, which is Honeywell Connected Enterprise, and basically my role is of a data engineer. So it is ETL, extraction, transforming, and loading. I'm currently like the part of the non-compliance team. So like it is kind of the similar role as the WnCC's. So it's like we are a part of the like fraud detection team, and then we pre-process the data and give it to the data science guys, and then they run models to detect anomalies and then see if there are any collusions happening between the sellers and other things like that. And the major thing I'm working on is graph database using Neo4j.
Thank you so much, guys. Wow, we have quite the star cast here today. It's hard not to be impressed. Moving on, the intern season is upon us, and I'm sure all of the attendees are anxious as to when the registrations are and what the timeline is for the same. All attendees are advised to keep the following dates in mind and preferably note them down. If you could now tell us more about the general timeline of the process. Any of you could start. Shruti, maybe.
Oh, I think I think they've actually answered this question well, because yeah, like
Sure.
a lot of yeah.
So basically, intern, like generally will ask you to submit your resumes by mid-July, and tests would, like in our case, tests began by I think July 24 something, and generally happens at the same time for all of us. So your tests will also like kind of start in the end of July, and day one comes after, like they take tests for a few days, and then there is a thing called day one held. This time the concept of day one was a little different. Like in our case, the day one was split into 3 days, and companies took interviews on all 3 days, and a list was released for day one. So these were basically companies who took their interview. Like all the companies take their test at the initial stage itself. Like around July 24 to July 27, I think all the companies take their test and they release a shortlist, which is based upon the test as well as your resume. And the shortlisted people then have to appear for interviews, which happens in July end mostly. No, I think now they take tests up to July end, and in this first week of August they take our kind of interviews. And I think day one was August 6 to August 8 this time, and by the end of they release the result of day one selections. This is the process at the initial stage.
Right, and if you could tell us more about your company's specific timelines for the registration.
Yes. So for Google, the test was held on I think July 24. They took a huge time to release the shortlist, and I think shortlist was released on August, like 2nd or 3rd of August, something like that. It was and then they take a session in which they actually explain us of what they're expecting from the interviews. It's like a 45 minutes to 1 hour session where they give us a brief of how will be the like process further. And for Google, they basically take 2 technical interviews. they do not go over your resume in the interview, and they only ask you questions based on DSA, and you're supposed to solve those questions. And for Google, they do not ask you to solve those questions on any interpreter. You like write the solution in a Google Doc, and if you clear one round, there's a second round. And generally, if they're clear about your selection by the end of second round, there is like they just release the official results. And in case they are a little doubtful about the selection, they might go for a third round as well.
And if the others could also tell us more about their company specific timelines.
Sure. In the case of Rubrik, it was similar to Google. Like they initially take a standard coding test, which is usually around July end. And after like a week or so, during the day one placement time, they take an interview of all those people who are selected, like shortlisted for the company. And they have like 2 to 3 rounds, interview rounds, and they are solely based on DSA. And if you qualify all those 3 rounds, then you'll have a HR interview, which is basically just basic stuff about you and why you want to join the company and all. Like most of the people don't get rejected in the HR round, and also they like discuss something about your projects and all. So in the coding round, there isn't much discussion about your projects and all. Those are mostly for the HR round. In the coding round, you have to like what is different from Google here is like they provide you a separate platform where you can write your code and also run the code, so that they can get the test cases and all. So this is what is different than Google in Rubrik. Nothing else. All the process is almost similar for most of the companies.
And if there's any other stages in the interview or in the process that was specific to your company and you would like to add?
There wasn't much difference. Like in most of the companies, they have a standard coding round and then 2 to 3 interviews, and that is like solely based on DSA and algorithms. So you have to just prepare for like for coding interview, you have to prepare for DSA, and for HR you can just prepare resume well. That will be good enough.
Thank you. And what about you, Naman? Was your process slightly different, or was it? Could you tell us more about it?
I mean, so essentially we didn't have any coding tests because most of our role does not involve like actually implementing stuff. It's more theoretical. And yeah, we didn't have coding tests, and I think you'll have the Optiva presentation in a week or so. And essentially for us, it was a week before every test. So it was not a week, but like towards the end of July, you had the presentation. 1 week after that, you had the first test. 1 week after that, you had the second test. And a week after that, you had the group discussions. And then finally, the next day, you had the interviews. And that's how it went. We had 1 HR interview and 2 technical interviews. And like the interviews can vary depending on how much they want to like see your performance, let's say, because some people had only 1 technical interview, others have had 3, so it can vary.
Thank you so much. So, we're seeing here that, the general process is the same, but there's just slight, specificities when it comes to companies. Moving on, we all know there's a lot of profiles that you can intern as. If you could throw some light on the different profiles and what makes a profile the right profile for you.
Yeah, I think I'll go first for this one. So like my profile is of a data engineer. So Honeywell initially it opened like for 3 profiles, SDE, then there was data science, and then there was a data engineering role. So like I kind of like in my second year, I had been doing development as I was a part of DevCom. So I kind of like wanted to maybe explore development and also like try doing that. But like as I am from mechanical dual, so there were a lot of companies which were not opening up for me. Like Consult was not open. Like I wanted to try out all of that as well, but as they were not opening, so there were just like a few things left. Like you can go for software, and then there was the ML or data engineer kind of role. So for me, like I applied for this both SDE and data engineer part of for Honeywell, and my resume got shortlisted for the data engineering role. And I mean, and like it kind of aligned with whatever I had done till now. I had some hang of databases and like SQL querying and all. Like if you have ever worked with backend or connected with some database. So I mean, like the profiles which you target is basically like you can keep a few things in mind. Like if you want to explore that thing or not, it can be a totally new profile. It depends on if you have some experience with better professional experience, or if you want to work in a company for that profile or not. So like this was like my mindset, and I had a lot of constraints as well. So like basically just software kind of opened up for me. So that's why I applied for this role.
Thank you so much. What about you, Devin? Could you tell us more about your profile?
Yeah, so like from what I think, any profile or anything is at the end related to problem solving. So I think so a data scientist solves problem of I think so processing data and loading it and giving it for further use, and software engineer uses his skills to create maybe websites, apps, and other softwares, and similarly other profiles. And I think so. Although there are various segments in software and various segments in data, but all of them are somewhat similar. So, if one has done any kind of problem solving in any aspect, so maybe a person has tried web development and he found it interesting, and he can opt for an profile for app development and similar profile for software. And if he found any data scientist project interesting, he can opt for that profile. And basically what type of problem solving you like, that would be the best way to decide the profile you want to choose. And that's my view.
And what are the prerequisites, if any, to choose a particular profile? Or any prerequisites that you were required to have at your companies?
So basically, I think so the companies test for DSA because that is a very general kind of problem solving. So it does not give any like proper outcome, like you do not make an app or you do not make a website or something, but you do some problem solving, and that's what they need at a company and like at a software profile basically. So I think like the prerequisite is having a mindset for problem solving, being able to think out of the box and also use the skills that you have gained through. And yeah, I think that's like I think so for my role, I didn't have any preparation or I haven't done anything in this profile, but I was able to like get a hang of it in a few weeks time. So I think so anyone can do that, and if he has the right, he or she has the right mindset.
Adding to
Thank
this,
you.
I'll also say that like most of the companies don't expect intern to have a lot of idea about what they're joining in. So like in the first week or so, they usually teach or like get a hands-on on what you have to do. So there's no need to worry about what you know and what you don't. So at this point, you don't have to worry about your profile. You just have to prepare for if you are applying for SWE, you have to prepare for coding. This is like general problem solving. And for other roles also, you have to be good in problem solving skill. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, I
Right.
think the point which Sir also mentioned, ki most softwares or frameworks which the companies actually work on are not open source. So they usually would want you to learn something which is very different from what you have done in your past experiences. So in general, you will have to be open to learning, like at least a tool. Every framework is very different from the general ones. Like even if it is a very basic thing like SQL, they'll just have their own language, they'll have their own framework, and we're supposed to work into their own segments. So eventually you'll have to learn in every profile. And CP is again just one of the very clear ways of testing if you are able to, solve problems. What they look for is they will discuss ideas with you, and you should be able to discuss those ideas in code. If you have this ability, this is basically what they're looking for.
Thank you so much. And Naman, could you tell us more about your profile?
Yeah, so essentially we have just one prerequisite, which is be good at math. I mean, if you're good at math, you can get selected here, and you need nothing else. Like if you're not even good at Python, let's say, they'll have courses to teach you, they'll have material to share with you. So you don't have to worry about anything.
Thank you so much. And for our attendees who don't know what SWE is, it stands for Software Engineering. Moving on, now we come to the resumes, right? Now we're all pretty paranoid about our resumes. You know, what should we include, what should we not include, and what makes a resume really stand out, and what is expected by companies in the resumes of their potential candidates. So could you just tell us more about resume building? We could start with Sahasra.
Sure. So I think you all will be starting the resume building thing soon. So the most important thing is that you mention all the projects that you have done, and like there is some order that you have to maintain. Like you can actually look up to our resume or some other senior's resume, so that you'll get an idea of like what should be the structure of resume and how you should properly mention all the things. And you have to like there are you might be having a few sessions on like especially on resume building tips. So I think you should attend that meet. And apart from that, like the most important thing I would say is like you should mention most important things on the top, like your work experience, or if you have any publication, or if you have worked with a professor or something like that, or about your past interns, or about your special like projects that stand out. So you have to keep those on top. And also do not forget to mention like other things like extracurricular, what you have like PORs and all. Those two are like important at least for the HR round, because they look for some other things like extracurricular, what you have like PORs, like not just into studies and also want to explore something else. That way is like you can add some 1 or 2 points about that also. So like you will definitely get like detailed overview of resume in the resume building session and all, because resume is like very important, especially for the HR round. And while shortlisting also, some companies look at your resume. So you have to like take important care while making a resume. So that's all from my side.
If any one of you could also share your view on this.
Yeah, one thing which I would like to add is like I had projects also in development and machine learning, but one thing I was sure was I was more preferred or inclined towards having a machine learning or a AI side intern. It could be CV, could be NLP. Like I've worked on similar projects, but I also had development projects. So I kept the sequence such like I kept the ML projects or the AI interns above the development thing, so that you take like the interviewer is going to like whoever is shortlisting your resume is first going to go through the upper part of it, and if they find it impressive enough or suitable for any project, they'll shortlist you. So try keeping things which are preferring to be in a role more, like you can keep them above. And extracurriculars, if you have something which shows that you have great communication skills, that is very good to have, because companies very clearly prefer on having someone who has good communication skills also. So even if it's a very small debating competition which you have ever participated in or hosted a very short event, I think you should try adding that, because communication skills is, I think, a good one. And if you know any foreign language, you can add that also. Like, it's not something that will get you selected, but that does add as a bonus to your resume. Like, you can talk to clients and all much more better if you know French or German as well. So it's a good thing to add.
Sure. Thank you so much. And
yeah, I think I'll.
Sure.
Yeah, so like first of all, just do attend the resume sessions and keep like make sure you guys get your resumes reviewed by seniors and your peers. Like it helps us a lot to like filter out some of the weird points which are written, or like seniors will help you like how to actually form points out of the work you have done till now. And yeah, for one question which is in the chat box, like which points on your resume do you think help during the resume filtering or interviews? It's like whatever projects you have done or whatever things you have been a part of, make sure your resume is like it looks clean and it's legible. Like make sure you put in bold or in italics, or like mention the important points because like no one will actually read the full lines. They'll just like go over it and then they'll like just the the keywords will get highlighted. And for me, in my in my one round, I was asked to like go over my resume. So like make sure whatever you have written on it, you have actually done it, and like I mean you are able to like pull it off. Just like explain it to them whatever the work you have done. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
Yeah, if I can add, I think this is a
Sure.
very good question by Saksham, and if the others could answer as well, because I think for me, when I had the HR interview, they clearly said to me that they haven't read my resume, and that if there was anything of interest to tell them, I should just tell them right now because they will not be reading it. So I don't think any points on my resume helped me, but essentially some of the points from my resume which I did tell them were the fact that I like to compete in different things, which is a very big plus for trading firms, I think. So I'm sure like the software and ML people can tell you better about what like how the resume works for their profiles.
Yeah, I think what he mentioned is really correct. And as Divanshi mentioned, communication skills and in general, any soft skill is really appreciated because in Microsoft and in other software companies, they work in teams. So they need you to be a team player and also be able to, get your ideas out in the open, listen to ideas, and be open to anything that comes your way. And I think so they in the third round of the interviews they asked me about any of the projects in which I was working in a team, and the discussion about that was really important for my selection. And so any soft skills that you can mention and any projects that display your role as to be good in soft skills, that would be very important in your resume.
One thing I would like
Thank
to
you.
add here is from a company perspective, as Naman mentioned, they do not really have a very good overview of your resume. They just skim through it, and even if they're looking for some specific roles, they'll just see on which side or your projects you have good experience in ML. Okay, let's take this clear because we have some projects in ML, so we can maybe put this child there. So this is the very rough idea of what they see of your resume. They really do not go through it. But if you're applying for university interns, they actually read every line of your resume from start to end. Like for my second year, I interviewed for 2 universities. For one of the universities, they even read one of my points from extracurriculars. Key I play chess, so they asked me to solve a chess puzzle there. So if you're applying for any university interns, they are going to read every line of your resume. So be very sure everything you write, every word is very well written, and whatever you're writing is exactly conveying what you want to. They'll read your projects. They'll also ask you to, explain over one of the projects which they find very interesting. And my university intern, which I actually got selected, was based on one of my previous works. So a lot of things what happen is ki even same CV, some of the tasks are very similar. Say I had worked with medical CV once, so they also wanted to work in the field of medical and computer vision. So they picked me up very easily without even a lot of hesitation. So the projects in software sometimes get very general in terms of university interns. So they can really help you out, and there you should explain your project very well. You should clearly write on the outcomes which you got, because results are very important. And as Shruti mentioned, get it reviewed a lot of times. I think every person who reviewed my resume gave me a very different perspective of what thing could be corrected more. Even like 6 hours before my resume submission, I was taking feedback from someone and correcting my resume, because the points your seniors mention are actually very important. So even someone very slightly but has done an intern at a role you wish to go for, make sure you send your resumes to them. Do not hesitate here. Do not know that person personally.
Thank you so much, guys. So, we've seen a lot about resumes and, the finer points about making your resume stand out. I think we can now move on to the tests, right? Now, the test is how the company gauges your capabilities and what gets you in the door, right? So we all saw around what time of year these tests would be held. Now, could you help us understand deeply how one can ace these tests, and what the mindset is for preparing for these tests? Anyone, if you could start.
I'll start with it. So for coding test, you have to you should be very good with the problem solving skill first of all, and you should have a basic practice of what the general questions that most of the company ask. So most of the questions mostly revolve around the lead code problems, separating out a few of the companies which usually go to a much tougher side of the problem solving. So what I would suggest, keep last 20 to 30 days to prepare all the problems from lead code, so that you get a hang of what companies ask in the interview and in the coding test, of course. And before that, you can try to solve much difficult problems, so that you get a hang of so that you can improve your problem solving skill. So for my case, I till the last month, I practiced a lot of problems from code forces and CSCS. And after that, in the last month, I usually I shifted to lead code and interview bit problems, because most of the companies ask those problems. So that is one advice for coding tests and interviews. And also for interviews, you should be very good at explaining your problems, because not just coding it, because they continuously keep asking about what you are thinking and what is your thought process and all. So you have to keep that clear in your mind.
Would any of you like to add something to these points?
Yeah, I think so. The general coding problems that we solve would be, I think, so untimed, and the problems on the lead code are untimed. I think so. On the interview bit, they are a little time dependent, but they give you that you don't have a constraint for problem solving. But in the company tests, we have a constraint, and maybe that is enough for the problems, but sometimes it's not. So a timed problem solving practice would be better at the end, because you can not exactly CP, but you can pick out a set of problems or use any earlier contests that have happened on websites like Codeforces and anything, and use that and in a timely manner try to solve the problems, and that will really help to simulate the environment of a company test.
And also, if you could tell us more about the resources or any online platforms you used.
So, I extensively practiced questions in the last month, basically, because at the time of company test, there's a lot of pressure, and if you're even a little, unsure of your ability to solve the question, it gets very difficult to actually solve the question, because there is so much nervousness already piled up. So I wanted to have a good enough confidence before actually facing the company test. So because I had also not practiced, I do not in general practice CP, or it's not one of my regular habits. So I think solved around 300 questions or something, which were related to companies, and I used lead code basically, which had questions aggregated in terms of different fields. So I solved some, there's some very basic, puzzle type of questions on arrays, and then there are questions on, basically this was just to brush up. Majorly what tests work on is graphs, TFS, PFS, or, trees or EP. So if you just solve a lot of questions, you get a very good hang of how to write code very fast. And I think also after one particular time, you kind of start getting hints by seeing the question key. This kind of question, if you mix two type of approaches, this is somewhere how the solution would go. And if you have some patches of the solution, slowly and slowly you match all the pieces and you get one final strict solution. So I think it's more like maths itself. So if you just practice more questions, you'll have more ideas. This type of question might be solved by this approach. So I think practicing a lot of questions is something we can try. I personally used LeetCode, and I found an Excel sheet somewhere on the internet which actually had a collection of some 250 questions from LeetCode, which were divided by difficulty and topics. And it made me very easy to practice any topic I wanted, based on any day. If anyone used any other resource, they can also mention.
I think no very good resource if you want to improve your problem solving skill and algorithms. So there's a CP handbook, or you can practice those problems on a website that is cscs.fi. I think most of them know about this, but if you don't know, you can access this website. It has a really good collection of 100, 200 problems, I guess. You can check this website. And they have a book also based on these problems. That is, I think it is named CP Handbook. If you really want to go deep into CP, so you'll get a lot of algorithms here.
Thank you so much. And Naman and Shruti, if you have anything to add to this.
Yeah, so essentially, like I told you before, I didn't have a coding test. So I didn't, I mean, because I wasn't interested in the software profiles, so I didn't prepare much for it. But essentially, what my tests included were, as I said, math and logical reasoning, some games which test your reaction times, like how fast you can make decisions and stuff like that. So I think there's nothing really you can do to prepare for them. I mean, you can try to practice quick math or something, but other than that, I don't think there's really much you can do. I mean, just if you're confident in yourself, you'll do good. So that's it.
So I think for software, whatever resources all of them said, I think I also went through the same things. But yeah, for Honeywell specifically, I'd like for the data engineering role, we did not have this coding test. We had sort of a MCQ, like there were like 50 questions, and they were mostly based on this Postgres and then Databricks, Hive, and like if you have like worked on some sort of like if you have some hint of DBMS, so I think you'll be able to solve it or like go through the test. And yeah, like all these things I think you can easily know if you read thoroughly the profile, like the IF which opens up. So there they mention the things or like I mean, there are some pointers like we work on these things. Some companies mention it extensively. So like before the technical test or before the test, you can like go through them. And for me, like before the interview as well, I went through like I used interview bit for like just to have an overview of the topics, like the common questions. So yeah, just like kind of revise or just familiarize yourself through the topics.
And if you're like very new to DSA and if you're, you do not know what all topics you should cover, I think last year WnCC released a DSA booklet, which actually covered all the topics you should, and it also has a lot of questions. So if you're like starting up with DSA for the first time, you can refer that. And I think it covers all the topics. It also has a lot of questions. So that can be a very good resource for you to get started. I think there are 4 or 5 booklets. It starts from, I think, scratch where you left CS 101 and then connects you up to graphs or DP, wherever in the end you need to reach. So that's one good resource you can use.
Thank you. Yeah.
Adding to this also, in general, if you are preparing for coding interviews and all, keep in mind that you have to be very good at DP and graphs, because these are like very two important topic that most of the company asks for.
Thank you so much, guys. And as we know, this year, as you know, slowly and steadily, the world's getting adjusted to the new normal. The processes would mostly be offline. So, if you have any pointers on that, or how you think it will differ, and what would help? Because I'm given to understand your processes were mostly online, but for our batch, it's going to be offline. So, anything that you like to add?
Yeah, first you can go ahead.
So I think majorly the only thing that will be different is the interview. So like that will be like very personal thing, but you have to be very confident to talk in person, and I should convey it, because if you're doing it online, it's like people usually don't get very nervous in front of like a camera or a screen. But if you do it in person, and if you like there is a case when sorry for that. So in such cases, when you are stuck at something, you like most of the people do get nervous. So after that, keep in mind that you should practice this in person interview with your friends and all, so that you don't get nervous in the actual interview. So that will be a difficult part from your side as compared to our interviews.
Yeah, I think for tests it will be similar only for you guys as well. Just you'll sitting in a lab maybe, but interviews will be different. And I think yeah, the interviews we can discuss more thoroughly also in the next section. But they are quite different from tests in general.
Sure. Thank you so much, guys. So we went over the test. Sure, Shruti, if you would like to say anything.
Yeah, so like I talked to a few seniors who had given the internship or the test like offline. So I mean, I think what Sahasra said, like it's basically you need to like believe in yourself and stay calm, because at that, like in the interviews they might just hand out a paper to you and then you might have to write your code and explain that like there, and then it might get a bit stressful like being face to face with the interviewer. So just yeah, like stay confident and yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing I would like to say is that like the interviewer is in this case would not be a professor or a TA, and they would just be maybe like one of us people in, I think so, 7 years in the future or something. So they are basically experienced people in their field. They used to be chill people like you, and they are chill people over there wherever they are, and like no one needs to be like hesitant or like in front of them, and you need to be as confident as you are in front of friends. And I think so, like if you have the proper problem solving skills, and you can confidently talk to a person, a friend or anyone in a person, then I think so you can ace the interview very easily.
I'd also
Thank
say
you.
like it's easy to go too far the other way and like be way too comfortable with them. I think at the same time you should be comfortable with them, but at the same time you should remember to just the general decencies of respecting their time and being there at time the time you're supposed to be and all of that small stuff. So do keep that in mind.
Sure. Thank you so much, guys. So now the test, we went over the test, right? So the test is done and dusted, but now comes the deciding half of the equation, right? It's your interview in a few days. You can't possibly go over everything again, right? So in this crucial time, how do you think one must prepare? In this small gap between your shortlist and your interview, any things that you think you should keep in mind, or any things in particular that you had done that you think gave an edge over the rest?
Uh, I can start it.
Sure.
So for interviews, basically after the shortlist, they actually think that you're a potential candidate to work there as an intern. So they are not actually trying to very much doubt over your skills a lot. What the interviewer is actually looking is, as an intern, your work throughout the internship is you will discuss ideas with your mentor or host, and then you're supposed to implement those ideas in code. So it like a technical interview is also basically the same. They'll ask you to solve some problem, which is generally TSA based, but again, like they would like expect you to discuss with them about the solution. Whatever you think should be the first solution, you discuss it with them, and there's a few discussion of ideas that runs through, because they'll exchange a few ideas with you, and then finally you will conclusively come to one particular idea. Okay, this seems the apt solution for our case, and then they'll ask you to code it out, and you should be able to code that problem out on your own, like without their assistance. The discussion part is like a conversation, but like although you are the only one who's supposed to come up with a solution, but they'll also kind of keep twisting the solution key. What if we add this case also, and kind of things like that. So you should be able to implement the code, and also the time is very limited. Like in case of Google, it is a 45 minutes interview where they ask you one question and then they stretch it into 2-3 more parts generally. So like in my case, they asked me one question, we discussed the idea, and then I was supposed to code it within 5 to 7 minutes, because then they had more recursive questions based on it. So to actually write that code very good speed, within 5 to 7 minutes, you should have a good hold of writing code very fast. Like key this will be solved by so and so tree method, say something or on those lines. So you should also be able to build a tree and solve according to it. In case of Google, you are allowed to use STL also. Like this is one thing. For interviews, you are allowed to use STL. So this is roughly how the interviews go. And
So I think practicing speed would be a good thing.
so what I did was, while actually preparing for tests, you kind of go a lot over the higher concept, like, solving very tough questions, or, thinking more beyond the page. And what I think is what is required in the interviews is, you go a lot over your basics. Matlab, the first solution generally comes for very simple basics. Also, they'll ask you very general questions also above the problem. So you should, I think, brush up all your basics very nicely. About every data structure, you should be it should be in 1 second, you should be able to manipulate how to insert, delete, update, all of this. Because this kind of thing is very much required while solving any problem. So what I did was, personally, I went through, say, graphs or trees, and I did simple questions like calculating the depth of tree or something like that, because there could be a question, it could be on something very basic lines, and it should not take a lot of time to actually transfer to the idea and then implement it, because again, you have practiced enough to solve the tougher questions easily, but you should not get stuck at the easier parts to connect the dots. So this is one thing I did. Others can also pin up different things that
I'll go next. So for me, like, I think before the interview, if you got selected, for me it was like my interview was on the next day, like around 11 a.m. and I got to know about it around 11:30 p.m. the last night, because one of my other friends got selected and like also got shortlisted, and she was like, "कि तुझे SQL आता है तो पढ़ा दे." So I think so the things which you should like do it for sure is like talk to some senior who already got selected or who interned at the same company the previous year. Like, they have a lot of things and tips and tricks which they can share, and ask them about the company, and like they'll give you very good pointers. Also, just look before the interview, just look about the company. Like, you should be aware of the place where you will be interning. Like, you should just do not go without knowing about the company or without knowing about your role, because for few of my friends also, the interviewer asked that, do you know the role, do you know your role, or do you know what is the work you are expecting, or like this can be one of the questions. And just revise the basics and basic puzzle questions also. They might ask probability questions. Like in my interview, I don't know where, but they asked some probability questions. And just go through your resume, like at least the projects which you have mentioned there and the tech stacks you are familiar with, or like they might ask you like where you used it and why you used a specific thing and stuff like that. And I think that's it.
Any other last minute preparation tips that you'd like to have?
I think one more thing which you should prepare for your, like, it is very basic. General time complexity calculation is not very tough unless it's a very different solution. But in an interview, they'll ask you to solve the question. And, in the end, they'll ask you to compute its time complexity every time you make any alteration. So you should be able to get that very fast. Generally, that's easy also. But in case it gets complicated in your solution, I think you should also be prepared for that scenario. You should at least know what is time complexity to actually get that.
Thank you so much, Divyanshi. And now we come to the interview. The decider, the thing you have been working for tirelessly. We're at the end game now. I'm slightly anxious just thinking about it, so let's get into it. As I understand, most of the companies have two types of interviews, the HR interview and the technical interview. We all understand how they would differ in a general sense of the word, but how do you think these interviews are different, or how are they similar? If you could tell us more about that.
They are very different in terms of what they ask and what they expect. So especially in the generally in the coding round, like coding interview, you have to just solve all the problems, and they rarely ask you questions about your resume and past projects. But if you in some of the interview, they might ask you about your past projects and all, just for 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. And in HR interviews, in some of the companies, they usually ask your past projects and why you want to join the company and what makes you stand out and all. So there's not much to worry about in the HR interview, because they don't usually reject you guys. So most important rounds are the coding rounds, and if you can clear all the coding rounds, it's usually much easier in the HR round. You just have to make sure that you're confident and all the goals are clear, and like you're good enough to discuss all the points that you have mentioned in your resume.
One thing is, for the technical rounds, they might ask you a design question. In that scenario, the question is very vague. Like, they'll not give you any specifications. They'll just ask you a very vague question about picking some particular application, say. So you're not just supposed to get started with programming. How will you get this particular feature to be live? So how will you program it? Basically, you will also be like, you're expected to ask a lot of questions to your interviewer based on any assumptions you're making. Suppose you're making assumptions that this is the format of input, you need to confirm it with them, because otherwise, like in design interviews, if you actually code out an entire solution, they might still reject you because you did not ask for clarification. Like this is a very important aspect. Like in one of my interviews, it wasn't a completely design question, but we solved one of the questions, and then they asked me to, kind of calculate which kind of data structure should be used to, store this data, and how should we go about it. So one very important aspect was, how was the input coming, how is the output going, and for that scenario, you actually need to consider a lot of assumptions. This many insertions, additions, or updations will be there based on the format of input. So do not make any assumption you are making, get it very clarified from your interviewer, because if you do not ask clarifications there, they strictly reject you, because this happened with one of my seniors, like one of our seniors. So if it's a very vague question, you should ask questions for clarification, even if it's a DSA problem, but you think you're making assumptions somewhere. Make sure you tell the interviewer about it. I am taking this assumption. Is it a good one? Or just frame a question. Is it okay to assume this? Not make any assumptions on your own.
Also adding to this, if you are preparing especially for rubric, apart from the last year, like most of the interviews were based on design. So I'm not sure why they didn't ask design question last year, but from what I've heard from my seniors, most of the interview that rubric take are usually based on system design. So if you are preparing for rubric, you have to be good at design problems also.
Naman, if you would like to add something to this.
Yeah, so again, I don't know nothing. I don't know anything about the coding interviews, but in the technical interviews for trading, generally they expect you to have logical reasonings behind what you are saying. So a reason such as make a feel aaya or something is like doesn't work. That would be a very big red flag for them. So just make sure there is a logical reason behind what you are saying, and if you don't know something, it is fine to say I don't.
Thank you so much, guys. So now that we have that clear, let's move on to how one should arrange their thoughts. How do you arrange your thoughts so that you can convey them properly to your interview? How do you tame this storm inside your mind, to get through to them and to prove to them that, you're a worthy candidate? Any tips to arrange your thoughts?
I think one very good solution here is asking your friends to take an interview for you. This helps a lot because your friends actually can give you a lot of feedback over what you did not convey and what you should have. So I think ask your friends to go for a just make a pair amongst your friends only. If you're not able to find an entire group, even just 2-3 people or 4 people are sufficient. Or if you can one of you can just take each other's interview and give each other feedback. You missed out on this point or something. So this is one thing which you should keep in mind to ensure that you're able to go with the flow and actually put out your solution very nicely.
And I think before the interview, it's very important to actually believe in yourself that you will be able to answer the questions, because a lot of friends I know, and it happens a lot that you are just so tense that you're not even clear. I mean, you just feel that I won't be able to answer, so that's why you miss some important points of the question. And even if you answer the first part wrong or the first question wrong, it's always about how you approach the next question. So it's fine if you don't answer if you don't answer one question correctly. It's fine. It's they also judge, not judge, they also check if how are you handling pressure and how are you carrying yourself, or how calm are you. So I think that's very important. Like, if you are shortlisted, that means that you are good on the technical front, but all these other things are a huge factors according to me.
I think Shruti raises correct points, and I think if you've made it to the interview, you know enough to crack the interview. It's just about, let's say, if you were interviewing someone, you'd want to select people who are like you. So what you need to know is what the company values. Like, if the company values logical reasoning, like I said, your answer should be more logically inclined. If the company values, let's say, some specific innovations in something, then they expect you to provide some newer solutions to things rather than a procedural solution which you might have learned beforehand. So it's important to know the company you're interviewing for.
And I think
And
one
also,
tip,
yeah.
one tip which you can use is generally you are not supposed to get very nervous in the interview. But sometimes you just enter a Zoom call and you are not expecting the number of people in the panel other end. So you might get a little nervous. So you can use a introductory question like, am I audible or something, to make sure you get 2-3 seconds to stabilize yourself. And you'll ask, am I audible? They'll respond. You'll say, okay. That gives you 5-7 seconds to actually calm yourself, and then you can start with it. So
It worked for us, but for offline.
in online also, in offline also, you can use something very light lines, just say something which is kind of like, there might be some solution to it also. We can start with anything which helps you break a conversation. And a lot of times you will find an interviewer who is very, very much into discussions. My first, in both of my interviews, I was able to solve the question, but I was very confident of my first interview because I was having a lot of discussion with my interviewer, and we were enjoying it a lot because when I was saying something, he was also initiating the conversation on the solution. So sometimes even your interviewer is going to be very much who likes to take discussions and solutions. So it can be a plus. So if you try starting an equation, it might work out. But like my other interviewer, he just wanted me to solve the question. He did not want to have any discussion. Like, even when I was trying to initiate a lot of discussions, he wasn't pulling off. So it may happen to any time, but you can give it a shot.
Like, one other thing I think would be helpful to keep in mind is that the company, they do not have any extra work that they want to give a person for 2 months. They are basically searching for a person that can be a full-time employee for them, and they have these internships for them, and basically that's why the PPOs are there, and that's why so many people get PPO. And at the end, I think so, in every company there are unsolved problems. Like, whenever you work in a team and you get a new task or you want to implement a new feature, there are unsolved problems, and you have to come up with ideas, and you have to go through steps one by one. And it does not mean that you have an action plan ready at the first step, or like you have the correct action plan at the first step. So even when they ask you a question, they do not want the exact solution exactly at that point. They want to see the thought process that you have. So basically they want you to interact with them, they want you to ask questions, they want you to give possible methods for doing that. And I think so, nothing a new method, or maybe a very wrong method would be wrong to give out in an interview. But yeah, you should be open to this idea that they at the end there are unsolved problems, and you do not need to have the full solution at the starting.
Yeah, one very important thing Devan mentioned is that an internship is actually a long-term process to select you as a full-time employee. They are they do not get a lot of work done as an intern. What they're basically looking for is like a long-term interview process to become a full-time employee. So you need to make them believe that you are going to be a full-time employee as well, so that they are actually interested in taking you as an intern, because that's how companies take interns for. So make very sure that you convey this idea that you are going to join them full-time and you're very interested in the company and its culture.
Also, one more thing, continuing this, don't mention that you want to pursue an MS or PhD in your HR interview. They straight away reject you because they want you to keep that as a full time. So don't mention this at all, even if you want to continue as MS or PhD.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think you should keep this in the back of your mind, but at the same time, like this shouldn't affect your learning opportunities during your internship. So to make an impression, don't like think of this as the leading thing. Like my internship is an extended interview. Do make sure you're asking the questions that you need to be asking. Like don't like keep this as a thing to be nervous about, like, okay, this is an interview, so I shouldn't be asking this because I look stupid. No, it's fine to ask it.
Aryan, you're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Sorry. Could you guys also go over some questions that all companies like to ask, or any questions that you were told that your companies would ask and they did?
For me, it was like kind of preparing for design interview problems, but like suddenly I was like bombarded with the coding interview questions. So that was pretty weird for me, but like it was very weird that only for that particular year they asked the coding questions. So it was good that I prepared already, but like there can be few differences in your current interview and what your seniors tell you that we were asked this and all. So be ready for that also.
Along with seniors, you can also talk to people from other IITs where the company has gone. Like this time, the day one at IIT Guwahati was done earlier than us. So I had also contacted, and they got the results also by the time we are actually having our day one. So you can talk with someone who actually got selected in the same company there, because they generally follow a same one same pattern for one particular year. So if they have asked some set of questions there, they generally work on very similar lines there also. So that's one also.
I'd also like to add, like, there are some questions that are just meant to like put pressure on you, let's say. So one of the questions that I was asked was, give me 3 divided by 17 up to 8 decimal places. And they gave me 20 seconds to do it. It's really before. So I'll tell you how to try it, like do that later sometime. But it's not so that they can make sure that I am a calculator, but it's more so that do I get nervous and can I just not do anything? So keep that in mind and just stay chill.
Yeah, for my interview, like they asked probability questions and like why you use this, like which tech stack will you use, or about some specific databases. So like it was very much role specific. So I think one tip could be just to be aware of the role which they are offering and the things they are working on.
Also, there is a YouTube playlist called TED Riddles, which is like, if you see it, it actually feels like these are puzzles for kids, but they are generally good puzzles. And some of those puzzles are also framed as CP questions. So you can, like, for fun, if you can watch a video every day, it will give you one good idea. Generally, those are good math problems also a lot of times. So like a lot of them are framed as CP problems. So you can watch that also as well for solving puzzles.
On a lighter note, are there any anecdotes from your interview or any funny memories from your interviews that you'd like to share?
And one thing I can share is that what I've emphasized on quite clearly, I think, is that they wanted people who were good at math. And essentially, in one of the interview rounds, I told them that 2 by 3 is 0.4, which really, like, their faces were things I cannot forget. So just stay chill, like I said.
For HR, like I'll let you know about the HR. So my HR round was like, the HR guy was like so enthusiastic, and he, like, instead of going over my resume, he started asking me questions like, which were your biggest mistakes in life, what was your biggest mistake in life, which was the deciding thing, this and like all of that. So I mean, yeah, he gave me I like questioned my life in that interview.
And I think,
yeah,
yeah,
sorry, one more tip for HR is like there are certain like very specific HR questions that you know that they are mostly going to ask. So rather than just like waiting for the interviewer to ask that question and then thinking on that spot, it's better that you have you have gone through those questions and have certain pointers in mind which you will be talking about, like tell us about some event or some time where you played, like where you showed up as a team player, or what was the most stressful situation, how you handled it, or like there are some questions I think, so you can go through that. And yeah, I can go for the dual degree question in the end. Like, I'll take that question in the end.
yeah. And I think a general question they ask in every HR interview is that, do you have any questions for us? And they can ask this in a technical interview also. And what like generally people do is that no, like that's it, and they say okay, bye. And that's not the right approach, I think. And they want a curious person. They want a person who is willing to learn and also willing to ask questions and has soft skills, as I mentioned. So best way would be to ask them about the company or the team or their role. So you can ask like, what do you do at this or so or so company, or what are you currently working on, or like something like that, and that would show really that you are a curious person.
Any other things that you'd like to add? Divyanshi or Sahasra?
I think most of the points are mentioned already. So,
Oh,
Yes, sure. So on a more serious note, and this might send Shruti in a flashback. Is there anything that you could have changed about that time, or any place that you think you fell short? Any things you think you could have changed or done better?
okay, so it'll like also answer Saksham's question for the exclusive set, like for dual degree students. So firstly, things are a little bit different if you are not if you are not from CS Elect and also you are a dual degree student. So there are companies which might open up for elect dual, but they won't for other departments. So firstly is like you should have that in mind and try not to stress out, because one thing which happened with me is in the start I was like my damn mentor told me that uh, for dual degree the internship season is a bit like it's not. I mean, it sometimes it can be very good or it can be very stressful. So I was like, what will happen? Like, कितना ही बुरा हो जाएगा या फिर ठीक है, let's see. But then when I realized that a lot of companies didn't open up for me, so so just yeah, keep that in mind and do not stress a lot. You will get an intern eventually, maybe not day one, but yeah, you will. Like there are companies which open up for dual students as well. And if you are sure that you want to go for a software role, so I mean, yeah, just make sure that you are good at DSA, like you are practicing DSA, because the technical rounds will have DSA questions. So I mean, in the start I was like very like I had done development, I was pretty much into development, but I never like formally or like did DSA. But at the start, so I would say that if you are, so I was not that confident, but if you know that you want to target a software intern, so I mean it's the right time to start. It might get a bit intimidating at the first, but I mean it's DSA will only help you if you are going for the software role. And suggestions, like if you are not from CS or elect and a dual student, it's like I mean talk to a lot of people, like look at the internship blog, Insti app, and look out for the companies which open for dual students and see if you want to target them in your year. So that will also give you a clear picture that you'll like know beforehand that yes, okay, these companies do not open for dual and these companies open for dual. So you won't be like you won't be having any false hopes or anything. Like it'll like you'll be grounded and you'll know what to target. And yeah, I think that's it. Any specific questions, if like Saksham or anyone, if you have any specific questions, you can maybe message me or team. So like just ask right now or you can reach out to me.
Sure, guys. Any doubts or any other doubts that you would like to ask the panelists, you can add them to the chat, and we're going to be addressing them at the end of the session. So please go ahead.
I would also like to add on the dual degree part. So honestly, I also attended last year's intern prep session, and there I came to know that the opportunities are different for dual and BTech. Before that, I had no idea it is going to be different. So I was a little demotivated, but then I thought कि इतना ही खराब हो जाएगा. And of course, while preparing for so many questions, I did not have time to actually go through Insta app and actually find out what all companies open for dual. I said, okay, we'll see whenever the season comes. And when day one actually happened, there were 2 companies which were open for me. And again, it's like a very low probability that you may get selected, you might not get selected. Like a lot of questions run in your mind at the very end moment. So I was like, okay, let's give our best to this. Even if this doesn't work out, there are a lot of opportunities. And day one is actually very much higher than it should be. A lot of good companies come after that also. So do not get disheartened or anything if day one didn't work out. Matlab, a lot of amazing companies come out after day one also. So do not lose your heart, just keep going. And again, there are more opportunities. Like I started looking at more and more opportunities as well. If things might not work out, there is again something else which you can do. There's GSOC also, and there are other programs other than just internships. You can look out for university interns maybe. Like there is a lot of things which you can do. And one thing is stay connected with seniors, even if you know them very slightly, but you're interested in their field of work. They can give you a lot of advices, and every senior will be very helpful to help you. Like in my scenario also, I faced it a little overwhelming during my intern, this prep phase of mine. And talking to one of my seniors really just helped me figure out it is in general a very hectic scenario for all of us. And you may do good, you might not do good. Eventually, you will be fine if you just keep going. So just talk to more and more seniors. That will help you relax a lot and also give you a lot of direction in terms of eventually reaching where you want to.
Thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to take a question from the audience, which is how much one of our attendees has asked, how much does CP matter in the resume and as well as in the technical rounds? Even if you'd like to start.
Yeah. So in the resume, like you may mention, like if you have done some exceptional performance in some contest or something, you may mention that. Like there are Google contests like Code Jam and Kickstart and Facebook Hacker Cup and something. If you have done something exceptional, you can mention. It would show that you have problem solving skills if the person knows what CP is. But not exceptionally in the resume, but yeah, in interviews, as I said, CPs are basically timely method for solving problems, and that is what basically interviews are also. But they are quite different from that, because in interviews you may not have to solve the complete problem, like you may not have to give the exact solution or print out something by using C in C out, but you will have to give an approach, and that's what you make when you solve a CP problem. I think so. Doing CP regularly is a plus point, but not an exact necessity. You can do CP of your own. Like basically, you can create like virtual contests that are. I think so. In Code 4C, you can create virtual contests for yourself that are previous contests, and they are timed, but not exactly live at that moment. And that would be the best way, because I think so. Doing CP exactly at the end can be frustrating, because you have nervousness and you may not perform well in any contest and something, and that might make you conscious about your abilities. But yeah, like I think so. CP matters in interviews, but is not exactly a necessity.
If there's anything the rest of you would like to add to this.
I think it depends a lot on the company also, because like some of the companies usually like ask very, very difficult problems, like uh, if you compare it from lead code. So especially in the interview, like they'll give you 45 minutes for a single question. So they expect you to like be very good at CP, at least for some of the companies. And for my case also, Rubrik usually asks very tough problems as compared to other profiles that are open. But they don't really expect you to solve that problem, but they usually look for what is the thinking process and how you like proceed with the problem, all that stuff. So if you have a good experience with CP, then I think that part would be you'll be very fluent at approaching problems and discussing ideas. And, that is one important point.
Thank you so much. And another thing the attendees want to know is when did you start DSA? What is a good time to start DSA?
Yes, as I mentioned,
CS 101. Like after that, like after CS 101, one can probably like, if I think so, most of them are probably in the second year or something now. And for the freshers, yeah, they can do regular lead code problems, like from starting from the easy problems and then with the medium and so on. But like if they want to start right now, yeah, like a good hand on coding, like basically solving some very easy problem in which you do not have to like have a very good thought process, but you just have to need some coding skills like normal vector operations and something like that would be okay. And after that, like once you have a hang on coding and you are comfortable with typing and everything, you can go for like building up the thought process and doing some that level of problems that would be asked in the interview, like the medium problems of lead code and something. Yeah, like not exactly the perfectly hard problems would be helpful, but the medium problems would be helpful.
adding to
And
this,
also, sure, please go ahead.
adding to this, I would say you should also give contests, because they are timed and like they are competitive. So the thing is, you will get a hang of, like, suppose if you don't perform good in an in an test, then you'll like try to improve your CP skills. So at least for now you can like give a few contests, and like in the end, when you're the internship dates are like all the interview dates are very close, then you should shift to lead code so that you get a hang of problems that company usually ask.
And also, is it important to have a certification for DSA?
No, not.
No, like they do not look at certifications at all. One thing I would like to add here is that there is no bad time to start, definitely. Even if a lot of you are starting now, do not lose on hope. Like there is 1 full month which you have to practice. Again, you might have to give in some more extra effort because you're starting late, but it's not like it's completely impossible. 1 month, if like you'll have to put in again much more time than others. But if you solve, say, 5-6 questions also each day, I think eventually you will land yourself to a much better stage than not starting at all. So we should not lose hope that these are perfectly robotic tests. If you really want to give it a shot, just give your best every day. If you can solve more and more questions each day, it's way better for you. Like you can start even now if you haven't got a good time to start. Like you can use maybe the last year booklets also. Like they bridge you from CS 101 to how DSA works. Like that is one basic thing which is a short network for you, because this might not come with any other online resource because you do not know where CS 101 is. So maybe you can use that, but do not lose hope completely and not start preparing. Even if you start today, there is 1 full month which you definitely have. Give in your best, and I think if you catch up faster, if you put in more efforts, you will eventually reach the bar. It's not impossible.
Another thing that they want to know is what are the most important things that non-CS students should keep in mind this internship season? Naman, if you could start.
Yeah, so like I think the major thing is just self-confidence, because there were a lot of people which like I know of them right now who just didn't sign the IFs for certain companies that were open for all because trading company they'll only hire CS and elect people. So I think that was a very unreasonable thing to do. And like if you really want to join a company, like why not apply for it even if they reject you? Just do that. So.
And yeah, I mean you will see your CS select friends like maybe getting day 1, day 2, and it's totally fine. Like in the end of the day, internship will start in this May, June, July only. So either you get day 1 or you get just in April, or like it doesn't matter. So it's like this whole process is about like believing in yourself and like actually like it's about like trying out things, right? Like you are interning just to like try out things, like to see how the company culture is and all. So it's totally fine. Just talk to seniors. Just like if you want to give maybe like if this is for software, if you want to give software a shot, just maybe talk to a few seniors and then yeah, just start working on it. And DSA is something which like it actually comes up like it matters. So I mean, yeah, just start it if you haven't already. As Divyanshi said, it's totally fine if you have not, but you have some time and you can do it. And yeah, don't think that you won't get an intern. People do get it, and there are a lot of like I know a lot of friends from mechanical dual only who got interns just like a month ago or so, and that too in pretty good companies, like externally applying. It will work out.
It's a major minor thing. If you are not from a CS major or a minor, it does not actually impact the essay questions, but it might impact some of topics from networks or say DB or OS, which like they might ask some questions on very much basics. But if you do not know, it's very okay to just say I do not know this particular concept because this hasn't been taught to me. If you have an idea, it's good, but even if you don't, it's completely fine to say you don't.
Also, another question regarding the CS minor is, does it really open up a reasonable number of opportunities which would have otherwise been inaccessible?
I think some companies in the later half of the intern season also like open up for so-and-so department and people doing CS minor. So it's not like companies do not give any importance to the minor thing. It gets you benefit sometimes.
Thank you so much. I think
if I can, I have one question for the other four, is that a lot of questions were related to CP. Like how much does CP overlap with what you're doing right now? Like, is it something which is only for interviews or does it come into picture when you're actually working?
So in my case, yeah, it kind of overlaps. Like it's not really that you need CP to do the intern because like we work on like a very different problem. But the thing is that if you do CP, you'll get a good hang of problem solving skill. That is like very needed, like very required thing in the internship. So that is one thing. And they like, as Divyanshi said, it is a very like decent criteria to like judge your problem solving skills and all, because companies don't have any other thing to judge your problem solving skills. That's why they ask CP.
I think two places where this comes a little bit. One, if you're applying to a very big company, they have a very huge database, like code base basically. And that code base is written in sometimes in a lot of complicated ways. So if you have actually written a lot of code yourself, it is very much easier to understand even complex structures. So one thing, this helps at this place. And the other is again, you get an idea if there is one particular idea in words, how do you implement it in code? So is something like this feasible also? So that is something you're able to guess if you have actually done a lot of CP problems. I think it helps you connect language and code basically. Like I think this is the only two places where I felt CP has been beneficial for as an intern.
Thank you so much. I think that brings us almost to an end because we're done with the questions from the attendees. So before we end, any general advice you'd like to give, about or any reminiscence of that time that sends you back any advice that helped you, or the feelings you had, some doubts, insecurities, and anything you'd like to conclude with.
I think in general during the internship season, you'll have a lot of doubts about yourself. Like, will you get selected, or like suppose if you cleared all the interview and got rejected in the last one, that will be very huge setback and all. So you don't have to worry about that. There'll be always an opportunity ahead of it. So just be confident in all your interviews and don't worry too much about your current if you get rejected or something. You have to deal that also during the internship session. Also, it will be very hectic at that particular week because we had there were 3 days for day one, and we have a lot of interviews in that time. So you have to be ready for that also. You'll have to you might have 5 or 6 interviews on the same day. It is possible. So you have to be ready for that also.
Yeah, I think a lot of uncertainties can be cleared up by just talking to seniors. Like, I think most of us have done that, and just speak to any senior in any company that you wish to apply in. They'll be approachable. I don't know, but I think most of them will be approachable and they'll be willing to help you. So.
And I think also while preparing, like you'll roughly have 30 days now, even while you will be preparing for say DSA or something. And trust me, not all 30 days are going to be nice enough for you to feel good about yourself for an interview. Some days you might sit for solving a problem and it just turns out to be a bad day. Nothing just working out in your way. So things do happen like that, but just talk to a senior. It really, really helps. Like I talked with a senior who was just graduating, and he mentioned that he did not even go for his third year intern. He got selected into Ubisoft, but for some reason he wanted to try somewhere else or something happened. He could not go there, but eventually he landed in Microsoft. So even if you mess up in between, it's okay. If you're trying constantly, you'll eventually land up in the right place. So it's okay to if you even mess up. Intern season is not the epitome of everything. Eventually if you're trying, you will eventually reach some nice place. So that is one thing. Other is day one, do not stress a lot on it. As I mentioned, for Google, the shortlist came very late. Before 3 days before our interview, we were told, and the test was done around 15 days back. And so almost I lost the hope I would get a day one intern because no other company, like I had applied for Uber, but I did not get shortlisted there. So other company was Google, which released the shortlist very late. So I had almost lost hopes on day one intern. So instead of just getting panicked about day one is not going to work out, I just looked at options more and more which I could pursue. It could be GSOC, could be some project with a professor, or companies just come later after day one. A lot of companies come after day one, and a lot of them are also very good companies. So do not make day one to be a bar for any of you. It's going to work out. Just keep patience and just keep going. And whenever it feels tough, talk to a senior.
Devin, any concluding thoughts from your side?
Yeah, I think one good thing that Naman mentioned was I think so everyone has fear of rejection, like in everything, I think. And during the internship season, this is a very everyone has a setback when they get rejected or they don't get shortlisted. So first of all, don't reject yourself for a company. So he mentioned that at least apply and let them reject you. Don't reject yourself. And I think so. Keeping your confidence in spite of the rejections is a very hard thing to do, but that's the right thing to do, because I have seen my friends who didn't get a day one or even a day two, but they got interns at very good companies, and they are very happy right now. So do not lose your hope over little things, and do your best. And I think it would be fruitful at the end for everyone.
Adding to this also, there's a lot of things going on inside the institute and companies. That's why they don't allow very good companies to come at day one. So there are a lot of good companies which come after day one and after day two. There are a lot of, because usually what happens is there's a lot of policies and all that stuff, because of which a company don't get the day one seat in IITs. So you don't have to worry about it. A lot of good companies are there which come after day one and day two.
I'd like to say that, I mean, if you want to get an intern, just don't just sit and come. Like, I mean, I see a lot of my friends who are like, they think that okay, nahi yoga, just CS ho jai. Matlab, just don't just do nothing about it. Start the preparation, follow some books or whatever the resources. Just if you are clear that you want an intern in this field, just do something about it, then you will easily get it, because there are a lot of people who do not do anything about it and just like maybe just lose hope and just sit. So yeah, if you are like planning to target some companies or some specific role, talk to the seniors and then start the preparation, and it will work out well. Also for the like around that time, it will get a bit stressful because you will have to like give the tests, and there will be your semester will also start, and I mean it will get a bit hectic, but I mean it will be worth it. So
Also, one thing I would like to add is one of my friends got intern at a company which came day one or day two through apping. So do not underestimate this kind of a thing. Even if companies didn't work out through PTCell is not your last ray of hope. If you try externally, a lot of companies also value you because you do come from an IIT and you might find contacts from your own college. So keep asking more and more people about their internships as well, because just imagine getting into a day one company by not through PTCell but applying through apping, and he got it in April or something, like this April. So things like this happen. Do not just estimate yourself that it is not going to work out for you. If you want it to work out, you will make it work out. There are always ways. Just keep searching. Don't lose hope in yourself.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm sure just talking about this must make you utterly nostalgic about that time of your lives. I'd like to end with a quote by Steve Jobs. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And I think it resonates with the times. And this kind of optimism is needed in these trying times. On behalf of the Weapon Coding Club and Career Cell, I would like to extend a vote of gratitude to each and every one of our panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedules to interact with us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we thank you and wish you all the very best for your future endeavors. Might I remind the attendees, is there anything you'd like to say? I'll continue. Might I remind the attendees, very soon WnCC is going to be conducting another session to help you prep for your intern, which is called the Internship Preparation Session, which would cover topics like OOPs, computer networks, database management systems, and operating systems. So stay tuned. Also, Rajat Jain will be taking these, who is now working at Quad-i and who graduated this year, in fact. Another thing that I'd like to add is a form will be floated out right now regarding any suggestions you might have had or any topics you think should be included in these prep sessions, and also to get feedback about this session right now. So please do fill them. Finally, I'd like to thank the attendees for their time. I hope it was an interesting experience for you. I know for a fact that it was for me. I had a blast talking to these guys. What an incredible panel we have here today. Thoroughly, really, really blessed to be here and to have a chance to talk to you guys. That's been my time, guys. This is Aryan Bhosle signing off. Until next time.
Thank you, Aryan, and all the best to everyone waiting for the session.
Thank you, Aryan. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Also, you are an amazing host, Aryan.
Thank you so much.
Definitely.
As if you were on a talk show.
I would definitely like to have your communication skills for my interviews.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can leave. Yeah. Thank you.